Hi everybody, I'm Mark Osiki. I work internationally, developing and implementing pollution control and infrastructure projects. I'm sorry I can't participate in person today. It would be great to be with you all in Erie, a fun, cool place, especially this time of year. CUE is grateful to the Society for Commercial Archaeology for giving us an opportunity to speak today, promoting the efforts of those trying to preserve America's often quirky, whimsical commercial architecture. It's important work. We very much appreciate your advocacy. So, a little background why I'm here today. I was born in Erie, and when I was a little kid, we lived in Erie's First Ward neighborhood, just a few blocks east of this area here. So I've got a bit of vested interest in the tireless work that CUE, the NAACP, Civitas, PenFuture, Earth Justice, and many others have been doing to improve social and environmental conditions in this neighborhood. We'll talk a bit more about this neighborhood, but before jumping into that, let's check out some nearby commercial architecture. Although many buildings have been demolished over time, the Bayfront still has fascinating structures, providing a glimpse of Erie's past. Some are historically interesting, while others are just an important part of a personal legacy for many Erieites, like me. Take this Polish Falcons Club where my folks first met. Were it not for the inimitable Nest 610, I may not even be here today. A lot of deindustrialization has occurred. This coal-fired power plant was shuttered some decades ago, as were more recently a coking plant, a shingle factory, a paper mill, all major polluters. Now, the power plant prevails as Erie's Maritime Museum. And although some may not view this as a commercial structure, I've included this church, both in its earlier and reincarnated forms. It's been an anchor point in this neighborhood for more than a century. Accompanying all those legacies, the Bayfront's attracted a diversity of recent large investments, drawing local folks as well as tourists and convention goers down to the Bayfront. You see what's shown here. The main library, multimodal transit center, hotels, a convention center, all signs of growth and prosperity. And so it continues. Everything highlighted here is now in various stages of planning. New living spaces, places to go, more jobs. Future's looking pretty bright, eh? Well, let's talk about my old neighborhood perched up on the bluff just a few hundred yards from where all this growth is happening. Things could be a lot better. You see the classical challenges here. Employers disappear over time, residents who could afford to flee out to the suburbs all long gone, and a vacuum of exploitation in neglect forms. Poverty, crime, even the school where I went to kindergarten has been closed. Affordable housing doesn't exist. Employment opportunities, very few. Let's stay on the slide for a moment, and I want you to keep in mind a couple of points here that we'll be coming back to. You are located here at the Sheraton Bayfront Hotel, the site of all this new gleaming investment here. Erie's main library, the Maritime Museum, and the Intermodal Transit Center, all located here. And you can see our Bayfront Parkway carving its way through the Bayfront area here. And here you see the Holland intersection, a major talking point for this discussion. Let's take a little bit of a different perspective of this area, this time looking east to west. So prominent here is a bluff that runs all along the Erie's Bayfront. And when I say bluff, it's a 45-degree slope, and it's very, very difficult for people to go up and down. Even the more fit amongst us would struggle. And directly at the base of that bluff in our neighborhood, we have a railroad yard. And historically, these features have prevented any access to the Bayfront from the neighborhood, except for Holland Street, the lone means of access down through the bluff and into this area of new development, the library, and over into the area where you were staying at the Sheraton Hotel. Okay, so let's park these points, all these historical and logistical points for a moment, and take a walk on the people side. Let's see what Erie's self-propelled population has been doing. Some of you may be familiar with the social media app Strava, a mobile phone app that uses GPS to record and map your movements while you're out walking, running, biking. It can also record such things as speed, heart rate, power, etc. And if you opt in, all this data can be uploaded to the public domain for sharing. So, about the map. The red lines indicate the most frequently used routes, and the blue lines the least frequently used routes by walkers, pedestrians, runners, cyclists. So these heat maps are very useful analytical tools for understanding the movements of the non-motorized public. Immediately apparent here, the contrasting zones of heavy and light people presence in the city of Erie. You can see it. Very high concentration here on Erie's central west side, very light concentration here on the east side. The map's a barometer of all sorts of things, perceptions of prosperity and vitality in a neighborhood, personal safety, ease of pedestrian access, running paths, walking, things like this, presence of entertainment in shops. A closer look shows the acute disparity in people presence between this neighborhood and the one just a few blocks to the west. On Erie's west side, multiple paths leading down to the Bayfront, but in our imperiled neighborhood directly to the east, only a single such passage point exists down to the Bayfront through the Holland intersection, serving this massive residential area here right in the core of the city. Now, this is not to imply that paths and crosswalks immediately eliminate poverty and crime, but their absence on Erie's east side correlates with other social barriers that have solidified over the last century due to topography, railroad infrastructure, polluting industries, not to mention fear and bigotry. All of these combine to landlock this important central neighborhood out of the prosperity picture. But there is some hope emerging for this neighborhood. Some good news. The railroad yard is going away, presenting an opportunity to treat this area as an asset rather than a barrier for this neighborhood. So the social barrier goes out and an opening for an enormous green space for public use goes in. Sadly, though, new challenges are on the horizon. A sprawling roundabout is planned for the Holland intersection, bringing even more and faster traffic and pushing pedestrians and cyclists even further off to the side. While so many other cities around the U.S. are dismantling the scourge of urban throughways that divide cities, exacerbate redlining, and foul the environment, it seems that Erie may be on an outmoded path that only encourages more traffic and further isolates neighborhoods. Okay, there is some goodwill behind the design. A pedestrian bridge on the roundabout looks good, but here the bridge only further imperils passage from the neighborhood down to the Bayfront, increasing walking distances and subjecting the public to steep ramps that will prohibit its use by many. Bridge seems well intended, and its curvaceous design is compelling. I mean, it's really inviting, but it must be noted here that such pedestrian bridges are considered a measure of last resort in federal highway standards. They're symptomatic of poorly designed infrastructure that divides and isolates. But let's not give up hope. Fortunately, there's a more contemporary approach to urban design, and you see it here. There's no need to encourage traffic along this stretch of the Bayfront Parkway, considering that Erie already has other existing east-west arteries with sufficient capacity for crosstown car and industrial traffic. The modern sustainable way is to divert through traffic and industrial traffic away from this part of the parkway and slow the remaining local traffic down, reducing accidents, emissions, and noise. In other words, keeping the Bayfront Parkway a parkway rather than converting it to a throughway. A park directly adjacent to Erie's library, intermodal transit hub, tourist attractions will further strengthen the cultural integrity of the neighborhood. Multiple paths from the neighborhood down to the bluff will give residents access to employment opportunities that will come with the new Bayfront investments, and attracting more foot and bike traffic into the neighborhood will strengthen the businesses of small local shops and restaurants that are reliant on walking clientele. Do this, and a rebirth of the neighborhood will follow, delivering vitality and safety to this core part of Erie. I appreciate your time today. We will be able to take some questions and discussion on these points in the panel discussion that will follow. Thank you very much.